Peace and love, family. Welcome to another Read Book Club discussion. Tonight, we are discussing the last chapter of The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power by Dr. Jared Ball. But you see, the title of the show or the title of the discussion, will Black capitalism save us? Will Black capitalism change the economic condition of Black people? And that was really to me, Brother T, the question that he answered in this chapter. But I'm your host, Dr. Ma'at, and tonight I have me, Brother T. Brother T, go ahead and introduce yourself to the listening audience.
Hello, fam. How you doing? I'm Brother T. Rollo, known as Brother T. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Read Book Club. Make sure you hit that like button because we want as many people as possible to come to see this discussion of this last chapter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And peace to Take. Greetings, Take. I see you in the building. Wilton Woolcock Jr. Peace to you, brother, in the building. Thank you so much for joining us. And so look, tonight we're talking about will Black capitalism, and I hear some feedback, Brother T, from your mic. But will Black capitalism save Black people? Peace to you, Sister Crystal Denise. Greetings to you. And family, look, you don't have to have the book, right? So again, we're discussing the last chapter of The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power. If you don't have the book, if you haven't read the chapter, still kick it with us. Stay around and you might learn some things. All right. And so look, I got my new book right here, Brother T. The new book that we're reading, after this book, our next book is The Color of Money, Black Banks in the Racial Wealth Gap. So this is the next book that we will be reading. So make sure that you grab your copy. And Brother T, I'm thinking that after we discuss the last chapter tonight, maybe take off for a couple of weeks, maybe 2 weeks. And then, we convene on the third week to discuss the first chapter of this book. Peace to you, A Beautiful Mind. I see you, Mr. Chris Johnson. Peace to you, New Black World Order. Peace and love to you, my brother. Peace and love to you, my brother. So, Brother T, go ahead and start off the chapter. I normally kick it off, but you go ahead and start it off.
Okay. You're going to be on page 101. We're talking about the conclusion, the policy, and organization versus economics. I'd like to read the abstract, if I could, or bring a point from it. The myth of Black buying power suggests often that public policy or politics are supplemented to the importance of economic development. That's one of the points I wanted to bring out. Then the second point was Black capitalism, business, and buying power must be either abandoned entirely or redesigned within a more appropriate context of understanding of the relationship of public policy to matters often isolated and solely economic. And I wanted to read that point because it's important for the chat to know the importance of policies. And let's bring up a perfect example before we go any further. The example that I want to bring up is what is one of the ways that we can obtain financial leverage in today's arena or today's market. We can do stocks, or we can also buy a home, which is one of the fastest ways that we can gain some type of economic inclusion, or definitely some economic foundation when it comes down to what we can do today. Okay, so let's talk about policies that helped us do that before we go any further, because it's important. Because the buying power, and Dr. Ball has been cleverly presenting in his book thus far, is that we need policy along with the whole inclusion before we go any further. Buying power is a myth, but we need policy in order to build economic power, basically.
Absolutely.
So basically, remember the Civil Rights Act of 1964, prohibiting discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin by federal and state governments. Now, 1934, we had the New Deal housing policy. Now, Roosevelt established to stimulate the economy offered home buying aid for Americans, but only white Americans. The Federal Housing Administration operated through the New Deal's National Act of 1934. Okay, what trumped that to help more African Americans get into the buying market? It was the 1968 Act, which allowed us to buy and sell without discrimination. Just that simple thing of act of policies helped us move forward to become more financial able to gain some money, some wealth, some equity into homes. Just realizing, hey, we need a policy so we can now go to courts. We can use that in order to fight. We can build some type of leverage in order to build wealth. So what I get from this chapter here is that we have to understand that policy is needed in order to build economic strength. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I think he did a good job in dispelling some of the myths.
Absolutely. And I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. When we read The Blueprint for Black Power by Dr. Amos Wilson, I always go back to that chart, Brother T, that's on page it's a chart that's on page 34, I believe, 34 or 35. And it's a chart entitled, 300 years of, wealth creation for whites, via the government. And so Dr. Amos Wilson in Blueprint for Black Power shows us that literally from 1675 to 1975, a slew of policies were passed that benefited white folks, from, like you said, the Homestead Act, acres of land, the Mining Act is another act with the FCC and the federal commissions. And so all of these different policies were passed, or laws were passed, that created wealth for white people. And we also read in The Hidden Cost of Being an African American by Thomas Shapiro, that the Homestead Act, that millions of whites today still benefit from that one policy, the Homestead Act. And so, we clearly see that policy definitely creates the wealth. And I want to talk about here, Dr. Bald in this chapter, Brother T, and I'm looking for it. He says this when he talks about, the importance of policies, and how the people who are powerful understands that they have to control the rules. They have to control the policies. So in the middle of page 106, actually it's the second paragraph, he says, as an example, recently authors Lindsay and Tellies have described ours as a captured economy, or one with public policy suffering already from regulatory capture. By this, they mean simply that the wealthiest have taken nearly full control of the apparatus of government and have set public policies to their exclusive benefit, while promoting another powerful myth of desiring small government. The elite continue to use the government in a big way to enact policy which protects their interests. So he says, what goods go to the market? At what prices? At what rates were those goods taxed and subsidized? What laws regulate banks or do not, or determine their function? The value of the money in our daggone bank accounts, right? He says, who can buy what land and do what with it? What wars are fought to protect which business interests, and who we are allowed to privatize publicly funded research, turning into military, defense, and pharmaceuticals for sale on a global market, and then who gets what share of those generated profits. All is determined by policies. And so we cannot deny the impact that policies have on wealth creation. That is why Dr. King, before he was assassinated on April the 4th, 1968, Dr. King said, I'm going to Washington to get my check. He said there needs to be a redistribution of wealth and policies. And so Dr. King quickly, he started, and now mind you, like you said, the boycott happened in the 1950s, but in the late 1960s, he understood that boycotting was limited and that we needed to go after the policies. That's why Black folks are fighting for reparations. And I know some people say, y'all begging a white man for this, or y'all begging a white man for that. But Sandy Darity, who wrote the book that we're going to read, From Here to Equality. What is it? Where's my book? From Here to Equality. Oh, I forgot the subtitle. Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st century. And so he's arguing the need for policies. Brother T, that you want to chime in? Oh, Brother T, you got to unmute your mic.
Okay, so to keep on going, you definitely you're on point. You're hitting every point.
And so, so we can't deny that. And so do I still advocate for Black people, establishing our own, institutions, our own economic engines in our community? Absolutely. I do. My son Isaiah will tell you he's been at Howard University for 4 years. And the first couple of years, he didn't have to go get a job. He was working with the family business, selling Meltrek, selling his books, selling the films. And so when he became a junior, or maybe when he got out of his sophomore year leading up to, he was a rising junior at the time, he wanted to start interning, and working. And that's when he got a job at Industrial Bank, which was right down the street from Howard University. And then he wanted to intern with Hewlett Packard, which was fine with me. He wanted some experience with his major, or in his major. And so that was fine with me. But the point that I'm trying to make is that because we started a family business when he was 13 years of age, he did not have to go and hunt for a job while he was matriculating through college. So I think I wholeheartedly believe that when we are entrepreneurs, when we promote entrepreneurship, and when we become entrepreneurs and we establish businesses, it does help out. With some of our families, Brother T, and I know you can attest to this, it provides a second income for some of us. We get a second income. Our children don't have to run out here, looking for jobs. They're running the business. We have money. We could take money and invest in stocks. I know that's what I did with some of the profits from our company. And so it does give you, it has its benefits. But I wouldn't say that me starting a family business would just lead to just a rapid reformation and a rapid transformation, Brother T, in the Black community. But I do think that with us starting family businesses, it does help. It does help. So what are your thoughts, Brother T? You got to unmute your mic.
Yes, you made some good points, Dr. Maad. One of the most important things of starting a family business is making sure that each member knows how to sell, know how to build a product, learn how to market. You can take these skills from generation to generation. It's very important. But like you stated, we cannot look at that as the end all to all, because
No.
to understand what we have to focus on is a global market. And those global markets, as you expounded on page 106, is a global market which is controlled by policy. And them policies help keep the rich money in their pocket. So we have to understand, how can we get a part of that? We have to continue to fight and get those policies to benefit us as well. And we have to learn and build from the examples that are out there to continue to build on what we have. Because there's nothing wrong with starting a business. There's nothing wrong with supporting Black businesses and making sure that we put our dollars there. But we have to learn how to get on that global market and understand what policies can help us get there.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you mentioned the global market. I just wanted to add on page 107 to when he talks about the GDP. He mentioned, the GDP, the gross domestic product. And he said that in the United States in 2019, it was $21.5 trillion. And he said that how these funds are distributed is a matter of public policies. And so he was saying, even if you return to what he calls the relatively modest cause of the Nixon era, OMBE, that this money be the pool of buying power dollars targeted by Black businesses and communities. He's saying that we would advance if some of those dollars were, targeted by Black businesses. He was saying, and that now you're talking. So if some of that money was redirected to Black businesses, then we would definitely advance. But that, again, requires policies, Brother T.
One thing he also stressed, and you talked about GDP, he only talked about how we have spokespeople. We have examples that he used were, I'm trying to look at what stars did he use. In previous chapters, we talked about Jay-Z, we talked about Killer Mike. He used examples of the money being geared to to certain businesses that marketed to us, but we didn't have any true influence. We didn't own these businesses on a global market. We were only spokespersons. So we have to find some way to change that dynamic, to really get into the game, to understand what to do on the next level. And but we're locked out. So
Absolutely
I
right. That's
that's what made me think about policies that were put into place that allowed us to move in that people can understand on today's mind. Like, okay, we all know we need housing. We remember those movies that we couldn't move into certain neighborhoods because of discrimination. But we still know today that we can move into certain neighborhoods, but when we sell our house, what happens? We can't get the same amount of money that other families may receive based off racial discrimination. So we see that policy is still needed. But Dr. Ball makes some great points. I want to go on to like page 101 again, just to make up why he basically made this chapter. Um, he focused on three things. Let me see, can I find it? Okay, good. The most immediate goal of this book has been to displace and permanently sever the conceptual relationship between buying power and liberation. The secondary goal of the book has been to discourage any further distinction between economics and policies, or politics, sorry. And the final goal of this book is to encourage more critical investigation into the existing class divisions and the role they play in the kinds of media and journalism which dominate most public spheres. And that's one thing that I wanted to stress is that the media aspect, black media, has not served us
mm-mm.
completely. We have not benefited from black media other than using black media being used as a tool to sell us products, or they change the correspondence whenever the political year to puppet the sentiments of the elite. But they have not given us the opportunity to produce any power in politics or policy with policies or any economic inclusion in the fabric of America's economics.
No, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And like you said, he mentions the media and how they use, and you said this earlier, those puppets to sell, so he talks about that a little bit on page 103, how you have Chance the Rapper. He promotes, Doritos, Two Chains. He promotes the Google's new smartphone. You have Little Nas X, and people know I can't stand that little boy. You have Little Nas X. He's promoting the Wrangler collection. Then you have Wiz Khalifa. He's promoting Oreo. So they, like you said, this media, black and white media, they um, they use these celebrities to promote white products. And then we go buy the white products. So we're, like you said, they're not serving us. They're not serving us. They're not. It's not like they're funneling black dollars to black businesses. They're funneling black dollars to white corporate owners, and so we're creating wealth for a whole nother group of people. And so I agree with brother Chris Johnson. He says while fighting to change policies, we need to continue creating our own. COVID and being black in America should make us entrepreneurial minded in the first place. And the great Africa the Great said we need our own policies as black folks. Get what we can from the power structures and learn to build a power structure for ourselves. So I appreciate these comments and would agree with them. Brother T, another thing that he talked about in this chapter was how you typically hear we say, well, the Jews are doing this and the Asians are doing that and the Arabs are doing this. Why can't we do that? Right. And so he says, and he addresses that. He says, if the argument goes more time were spent developing black wealth like Jews, this is the top of page 106. He says, like Jews or Asians running the corner stores and hair care businesses in our communities, then black people would come up as those groups have. He says, what these perspectives generally miss is that whatever advances these or other communities have made are not erasing class divisions within any of those communities, or their originating countries, and B, whatever anyone has done to improve their economic position has required public policy or government support. He says poor people, black, white, and so on, cannot close any societal gaps, economic or otherwise, without political movements which assume political power and redirect public policy to work for more, if not all. So, a lot of us, Brother T, over the years, I've been hearing that. We say that a lot. Well, the Jews are doing this, or the Italians are doing that, or so and so is doing this. You start thinking of little minority groups, and then we compare ourselves to them and say, well, why can't we? But if you really look at these groups, especially the Jews, you'll see that they have a very close relationship with the government. Policies were passed in their favor. Look at what Barack Obama did. Remember, I think he set something up where the Jewish community got millions of dollars for the Holocaust, and the Holocaust didn't even happen on this damn soil. But he set up something so that they got millions of dollars dumped into their community. And it seems like that's what Biden is getting ready to do with these Afghans, saying that they're trying to pass a policy to give each Afghan family $450,000. And so again, these are policies that are being created to put money in these people's pockets.
I remember something going on here in Baltimore some time ago, and a group of brothers, we wanted to get together to try to push on some Korean shops by getting more black employment, or get them closed down. Um, but when I did my investigation, I looked at the Korean Association here in Baltimore, and
Mm-hmm.
what I saw was a lot of some of our local politicians taking pictures with them. I've seen a lot of our organizations and pastors taking pictures with them as well, because I knew that when the first day of school and when your church gave out all those book backpacks and stuff like that, some of them backpacks were and the pencils and the paper were donated by some Korean store owners. I realized also that some of the politicians, when they needed support, they went to these organizations and they received funding. So when you say, "Oh, they don't do politics," they do politics locally and federally. They sit down with the organizations and they make things happen behind closed doors. So we don't have to see them all the time when protesting and with the picket signs, because they understand that the money helps push the politician into the office, and that also allows them to get certain things done. So when it comes down to Barack Obama, yes, he continued to give that $16 million yearly to Israel. And you also mentioned with Biden, Biden also will push for a policy maybe to give that $450,000 to Afghan. But remember, he also has a plan to maybe give some to a Latin American country, because this is what he mentioned through his run for president. So we cannot be blind and forget those things that this man said when asked about reparations. And we cannot forget about Kamala or Kamala, depending on what day of the week it is. You have to remember her Indian ties, and also some of the things that she pushed for when running for vice presidency, helping the Indian population here in America. So remember, they will look for their self-interest, but tell us that they can't do anything for us, and if they give us anything, it will cripple the economy.
Mm, mm. And Sister Crystal said, "And therein lies the problem. Who is going to put policy in place for us?" And I'm like, bingo. She said, "There's the problem." I mean, so we know, we know that we need, public policies created that will empower us. But why would anyone want to do that, right? Who is going to put those policies in place for us, Brother T? Who's going to do that for us? And then if they don't decide to do it, do we just sit there and say we're just going to keep on waiting for public policies, or do we say, well, let me try to start building and make something happen? I mean, it's sometimes, Brother T, I feel like I'm in this. We're up against the behemoth, like the beast, And it's kind of like we know the problems. We're like, okay, we need policies. They don't want to give us policies. But then we say, okay, well, let's start our own businesses. But then our businesses don't get the support that they're supposed to get. And so then we're looking, it's like it's just like I feel like we just can't catch a break, Brother T, sometimes.
The issue is this, and it's said in the chat, and the same sentiments that you have definitely shared. It's about building what we can with what we have until we get what we need. We still have to build. We still have to build black business. We still have to support black business, but we cannot support it blindly. We got to understand that I think I shared a clip earlier with Fred Hampton when the brothers came to Fred Hampton asking him to, hey, let's build a credit union. He says, this is a great idea, but we need education to make sure that we understand the end goal before we even start. The problem is we need to understand exactly what we're doing and how to do it correctly. So when it's done, the foundation is strong. So that's the most important thing. So I think we continue to build, we continue to learn these lessons, but we can't do it without education, correct education.
And that's 100%. And that's why he said that we have to do away with the myth. He said that at the end of the chapter. He said,
in the propaganda.
Yeah, they got to do away with the myths that are floating around in the black community and the propaganda before we can come up with, viable solutions to fix the problems in our community. There are a lot of myths running around here, a lot of myths that we circulate and that we believe. And so Hurry Up and Buy said, yeah, he said that we need to stop giving our votes for crumbs, giving out our vote for crumbs. He said he's building a website called Black Blocks where it says we out what the black people need in a box, and we don't give out our vote until we have a hard answer for us. Peace and love to you. Africa the Great said he sent me a Cash App. Thank you so much, Brother Africa the Great, for the Cash App. Appreciate you, brother. It says, Hurry Up and Buy says, also, we need to understand that voting is about money. Every other race understand this but us. We need to vote with our money and stop putting the old rundown black establishment in office. And a beautiful mind, she said, our struggle is real. It is. The deeper you get into this stuff, it's real. It's real. So he does talk about that. And one thing he pointed out on page 105, T, was when he talked about when we believe misinformation. How like on social media, we're literally inundated with misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. But I like that Dr. Ball on page 104 to 105, he says that people are more likely to use a piece of information in their reasoning when this piece of information is congruent with their attitudes and beliefs. However, let's say that you come across a retraction, right? He says now, when accepting a retraction does not require change in underlying attitudes, it will not be rejected for attitudinal reasons. But when a retraction does challenge people's underlying attitudes, they will resist it. So, and he was talking about this in the context of buying power, right? So he's saying that, okay, black folks will believe, as long as they will believe that we have the buying power of $1.2 trillion. And we'll believe that even if a retraction was put out there, we will continue to believe it because it aligns with our attitudes, right? Our beliefs, our goals, what we want to do. But if a retraction is put out there and it requires people to change their thoughts, people will resist it, because people don't like change. And so again, like you said, in order for us to come up with viable solutions, we have to do away with our myths. We have to do away with propaganda. We have to do away with misinformation, and we have to change our attitudes. I just wanted to say that, Brother T.
Good point. I mute myself so the back, so we won't have the back thing. But yeah, definitely good point. I had nothing to say on that part.
Okay, cool. Brother Johnson says, does Ball discuss the role of cultural cohesiveness and economic empowerment like Dr. Anderson and Dr. Amos Wilson discussed in their works? No, he didn't talk about cultural cohesiveness. And you're 100% right. Empowernomics, Dr. Anderson spent an entire chapter talking about, an empowering culture. What is it? Empowering culture versus disempowering culture. And Baba, Dr. Amos Wilson, spent a great deal talking about cultural cohesiveness and Blueprint for Black Power. Particularly, I believe it was chapter 2 and chapter 3.
Can you expound on that just a little for those who may have need a little bit more clarity?
Okay, so I mean, I guess when we talk about culture, we're talking about a collection of behaviors, right? Behaviors, thoughts, identity, language, um, all of those things. That culture is like a system. It's the glue that binds people. And so Dr. Amos Wilson, in his book, he talks about how economics is predicated on relationships, right? And so so in order to empower ourselves economically, well, we have to create a culture that does that, right? Like, so your culture is what protects you, your culture is what drives you, your culture is what defines you. I mean, culture is everything, and so he talks about how culture plays a significant role in economic empowerment. And Dr. Anderson said in our in Empowernomics that we're right now we practice a disempowering culture. When you look at how the things we identify with, when you see how we treat each other, how we the code. How they always say we're off code. Well, your culture is your code. And your culture produces. We got to understand the connection between culture, psychology, and behavior. So your culture produces your psychology, and your psychology dictates your behavior. So if you want to empower people, economically, or you want to move people to do something, then you got to control the culture. It all goes back to the culture. So, Brother T, I don't know, did you want to add on to that or expound on that?
Well, I'm glad you explained that because that tells you what Dr. Boyd, I'm sorry, Dr. Boyd, my professor, Dr.
Dr. Ball.
Jared Ball did do in the book was help us to be careful of the charlatans in the community. He talked about how, and Nelson talked about the black consumer's path to purchase. They try to develop a culture or develop a look, an ideal, so we can be softened to be sold to. So if we had a more cohesiveness when it came down to our culture, we couldn't be led astray because we would have known that this is foreign, that this is not what we need in our community. So he can talk. That's why he focused so hard on media and media's um, plan to help soften us to be sold to, especially this myth. So I think that if we focus more on what Dr. Amos Wilson and also what Dr. Claude Anderson mentioned in their works, we would not be led astray so easily. And this is what Dr. Ball has mentioned in his book thus far.
Absolutely. And when you spoke about media, I was thinking about how media transmits culture. You know, it transmits culture. And but I do agree with you that if we were on code, uh, certain things wouldn't be able to penetrate um, um, us the black community if we were on code. And that code is your culture. Okay, that code is your culture. All right, family. So look, I know that some people are just joining us. Please make sure, right? I'm sorry, I look at this. We are discussing the last chapter of The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power by Dr. Jared Ball. Our next book is The Color of Money, Black Banks and the Racial Wealth Gap. So we will be discussing the first chapter of this within like the next 3 weeks. We'll probably take like 2 weeks off. And then in 3 weeks, let me look at my calendar. So 2 weeks. So that means we would come back on December the 5th. And then I would be with you all from on the 5th and the 12th. And then I'm going to Egypt with Dr. Anthony T. Browder. I'm leaving with him on the 15th or the 16th of December. And I'll be back on December the 25th. So I'll miss let me see. So the 5th, the 12th, I would miss the 19th, and then I will see you all on the 26th. But family, make sure in the meantime that you get the next book, The Color of Money, Black Banks and the Racial Wealth Gap. Okay, and start reading this as soon as you can. Um, One thing I do want to say before we close out, Brother T, actually, it's two things. Um, on page 102, when he talks about capitalism, he says capitalism does not distribute created wealth in such a way to close material gaps. So a lot of people will argue that all we have to do is to start opening businesses and this will close the racial wealth gap. And Dr. Ball is saying, no, it's not going to close material gaps. He says, in fact, those gaps are prevalent. As Nick Hanira, I probably butchered that, said, either capitalism will allow people to lead stable and dignified, secure lives, or it will need to be replaced. He says, if domestic and global inequality are signs, then capitalism needs replacing because fewer every day are able to lead stable or dignified lives. There are obvious relative differences, but capitalism cannot be said to be working for an entire racial, religious, or ethnic group. And he said, not even the white ones. So it seems like to me, Brother T, in reading that Dr. Ball is saying, that this is not a system that works for us, that this entire system needs to be thrown away, and replaced. What are your thoughts on that, Brother T? Because back in the day, they talked about communism and socialism and all of that. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think capitalism is a system that needs to be thrown away?
Capitalism definitely does not work for us because we've been left out for so long, and only certain images or facade has been thrown our way. Creations like black capitalism, and so we never had a leg to stand on. For us to get a fair share, we have to be part of the money making, um, policy making agenda, and we're not. So we can, and that's and proof of that is because we for every election we're fighting for attention. For every election we're being replaced by different people in need. This year, Afghan. You know what I'm saying? you know, they get 3 years. We got 400 years. And we every policy, every presidential debate, we are being left out. That shows you that we are not being included in the capitalism that runs this country. There were policies. Um, I wanted before we ended, Dr. Ball talks a little bit about black politics on page 107, the ending chapter. However, solutions requiring asking and answering of different questions can never be developed when premise an illusion created by the illusionists. Black politics cannot continue to be heavily dominated and limited by a marketing tool developed and used by commercial media and business class. The meaning of power must be reclaimed and understood, not as resulting from consumption, but as organized, collective, and mass political action. So I just wanted to end with that point because, like you said, it has to probably be thrown away, but it has to change. What's happening right now has to change, and how politics is being used right now, it's not benefit. Now that's why you hear a lot of people in the community talk about down Democrat the ballot, and only focus on things that could help us, um, and maybe in our communities, because we are not getting help politically, but we have to change that by looking at this with clear eyes.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more, Brother T. Like you said, we have to change this. We have to change this, and people are getting tired of it. And like you said, it was called the down, I think down Democrats or something like that. I forgot
Yeah,
the
down ballot Democrats.
down ballot Democrats. Absolutely. So like you said, people are starting to wake up slowly but surely. People are starting to wake up slowly but surely. And so again, this racial wealth gap is not going to close with it, just us opening businesses or
Hmm.
black capitalism. Because it said, it was a report that came out that black women own 2.5 million businesses in America, right? But on page 104, Dr. Ball tells us that the widening, he said the racial gap is widening. And he says almost 70% of middle class Black children are likely to fall out of middle class as adults. So Black capitalism, 2.5 million businesses, and then you're saying we have $1.2 trillion buying power, but yet the stat says that almost 70% of middle class Black children are likely to fall out of middle class as adults. Right.
And think about this. We just talked about businesses. That was one part of the puzzle. Unbankable brothers and sisters in our community. The unbankable, the ones who banks will not even carry. Think about this. What's going on right now? Let's look in Detroit. I read an article last week about how they're being taken advantage by fake landlords. Why are they being taken advantage by fake landlords? Because once again, you have people who in that city is going downhill, politics and everything. There's no one there to protect them. Well, because they unbankable, they paying these fake landlords in cash. Now they build up these fake deeds and they talk to fake project manage property managers. You have people paying this person monthly. At the end of that contract, the person asks for the deed. Guess what happens? The person disappears. The person who thought they could own a home are not being protected based off because the real owner saying, "Hey, why are you in my home?" Because they live out of town, so they believe that these people are squattering. So our brothers and sisters are living in communities with no type of protection. They lost their money and they've been swindled out of the money that they do have, cash, and got to start all over. The lady in this article, she was 65 years old. The reason why I bring this up is because in our present day, we have a rent moratorium that will be lifted in 2021 and 2022. Scams are going to run through our communities. And because of no money, no protection, we're at risk. Not just cyber risk. We're talking about every day trying to live because we're not bankable. We got hundreds and thousands of our brothers and sisters who don't have any money in the bank, and they're living off scratch, and they can't even get the right housing. So it's a lot of stuff being done today that we can't even combat against. But because of the present day of the economy, we'll continue to be wiped out based off what's happening. When a rent moratorium lifts, it will be more people coming in and saying, "Hey, you can buy this home." Guess what? For $600. And if people who can't afford the average amount of rent, guess what happens? They're going to go fall for these scams. And guess what? They'll be wiped out. People are doing it now because of the chips. Now we talk about stuff that's happening today. I want to talk about things happening today.
But hold up, when you said that, Brother T, I started thinking about what was happening to our ancestors, where they would get locked into those contracts. Remember, they would say, they would think that they're doing business with the mortgage company, but it's really like these white folks. They're kind of like middlemaning between the mortgage company and them, and they would pay on the house, and then the people wouldn't give them the house or the deed. So you're saying this is happening right now in 2021? You have to send me the article.
I'm gonna see the article. This is happening today's brothers and sisters. We are being taken out today with the same tactics.
Same tactics that they were doing.
And so when people say, "What can we do?" We got to fix it. We're getting. Think about this. The chip that most new cars have. There's a chip shortage. So people are now going to buy used cars. They're taking advantage of those who trying to get out of financing, the banks, financing because of the high interest, because of inflation, It's taking our dollar away. So what they're doing is now raising the price of the used cars. So what are scammers doing? Scammers are saying, "Hey, you can get this 95 um, uh, this 95,000 mile car for $1,500." People who can't afford a used car, who cannot afford financing, are going for these scams. We're being scammed. The point I'm trying to make is that poor people are being taken advantage of here in the States in small ways, ways that we should be protected with having wealth, but because we don't have wealth, we're being taken advantage of. So this is the reason why I brought these up, because this book talks about how we should gain wealth, gain political strongholds, not understanding and understanding how media plays. But we are being played today on the simplest levels, out of homes, out of not being bankable. So when Dr. Ball talks about us being a capitalism being changed, it must be uprooted. It must be changed. We must learn how to adapt.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. Peace to Brother Sutek. Brother Sutek is in the building. Peace to you. I see that the brothers UK, he's in the building. Sister Jetta Love, I see you. I see all your comments. Sister Brother CJ Young is in the building. Peace to you, Brother CJ Young. Thank you for joining us. We're wrapping up right now. We were reading or discussing the last chapter of the myth and propaganda of Black buying power by Dr. Jared Ball. I had announced, for those who are coming in, I announced that our next book is The Color of Money, Black Banks in the Racial Wealth Gap. And so this is the next book that we will be discussing. And our first discussion is going to be taking place on December the 5th.
Okay.
On December the 5th. So I think that's plenty of time to grab the book, at least read the first chapter, the introduction, and we meet on December the 5th to discuss it. Brother T, do you have any closing words for? Oh, before we close, didn't you want to show them a Fred Hampton clip?
I did, but I don't think we put it on. We didn't put it on. Um,
What was that Fred Hampton clip about? It talked about revolutionary education. I could pull it up. It's only 3 minutes.
yes, revolution education. Um,
Revolution. Mhm.
yeah, should I? Do you have it?
Yep, I'm getting ready to pull it up right now.
Okay, great. And this clip here talks about when things are brought to us, we have to have understand the framework, not just have it on paper, but understanding the end goal. And what Fred Hampton talks about, how we have to have the education, we have to educate the people, because great ideas must be explained as well. So um, this is a good clip of the late great Fred Hampton, and how he vetted an idea that came his way.
You basically knowing my ideology, basically me knowing yours, you can support some of our programs. Is that what you're saying? Why not? And you believe in programs like the Breast for Children program and free health clinics? Right on, brothers?
We believe they're good things.
Uh-huh.
As a focal point to organize their mothers and fathers.
Uh-huh.
Peace.
Mm-hmm. There's no educational program here?
That's come out of the socialization thing. You set that up, brother. I mean, we can't put everything on one piece of paper.
What about this bank?
Credit union?
Mm-hmm.
Credit union. Credit union, my brother.
Is a bank.
Are you hip to credit unions? It is a bank.
Yeah, you go and borrow money?
Yeah, it's a bank. It's a bank. Owned by the people. Run for the people. And by the people.
What will money be given out to people for?
Well, the people would decide that. You want to buy, whatever, the people in the community decide. You need some living room furniture, maybe? You need a car, maybe?
See, the thing is with me, you dig, I need to know some more about it. I wish you had some more literature about the educational thing here. Because you dig, as far as we concerned, in the struggle, the way we look at struggle is that this depends on the educational thing, you dig. Because
this depends on the education. Well, the whole thing.
No, but in the end, this does. You can form this with no education. You can form this.
No, not the way we talking about forming it. Right. We talking about forming it. Right. It's not on the paper. We didn't write it on the paper.
Form it right with no education.
No.
Let me give you an example. Jomo Kenyatta formed the excellent revolution with no education. And on did the end thing, Yomo told the motherfucker, I said, well, you can educate hate the enemy, but I'm your brother. I help you lead the revolution. Now I'm gonna press you. Another example, Papa Doc in Haiti. Papa Doc in Haiti hated everything white. Man, you couldn't put this white paper in front of Papa Doc's face, but he moved all the white people out and he took over and be a president. He did, causing no education. And the people that have been educated, they just said that we don't hate the motherfucker white people, we hate the oppressor, whether he be white, black, brown, or yellow. So we got to know the educational program to find out what is going to be in the finale. A lot of people work. Yomo Kenyatta is called not a never a revolutionary, but an ex-revolutionary. So it's Papa Doc. They brought on a successful revolution. That thing in the Miles was a bitch. Bantu freedom fighters, all that kind of action. What we're saying is the end. But you don't judge Castro now. You can't do it. Nobody in this room could judge whether Castro's going to be a revolutionary or not. You know what I mean? We're talking about things, you know what I mean, with China, the People's Republic, and even at the stage they're in now, talking about even going on further into a communistic state. That's what we're talking about. Those are revolutionary. So we got to understand here the educational program that you have to be able to figure out whether it will go on the right lines where the people will end up in a situation where they can be able to really control themselves. You understand what I'm saying? With no education, the people take this local foundation and start stealing money because they won't be really educated to why it's the people's thing anyway. You understand what I'm saying? With no education, you have neo-colonialism instead of colonialism, like you got in Africa now, like you got in Haiti. So what we're talking about is there has to be educational program. That's very important. As a matter of fact, we are so important for us that a person has to go through 6 weeks of our political education before he can consider himself a member of the party, able to even run down ideology for the party. Why? Because if they don't have an education, then they're nowhere. You dig what I'm saying? They're nowhere because they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. You might get people caught up in the emotionalist movement. You understand me? You might get them caught up in because they're poor and they want something. And then if they're not educated, they want more. And before you know it, they'll be capitalists. And before you know it, we have Negro imperialists.
Oh my goodness, T. Woo.
Education. We got to know what we're doing and why we're doing it. And if the faces, we have to have platforms like you're doing, Dr. Ma'at, to examine exactly what we're doing so we can discuss it to see if it really works. So we just not sold things easily. And Fred Hampton made a perfect example in that clip.
Absolutely. And so with that said, Brother T, we can go ahead and close out. So we closed out with the great ancestor, Chairman Fred Hampton, and that was powerful. And what you just said was powerful. So do you have any closing words, Brother T?
Thank you all for joining us for another book reading. I can't wait to discuss our next book. Dr. Ma'at, thank you so much for creating this platform, and I'll see you on the next run.
Hey, and thank you so much, Brother T, for being a part of the platform and helping to
You're
build the
welcome.
platform. I love all that you bring to the platform, your input, your knowledge, your expertise. Thank you so much. And family, thank you so much for tuning in. I see Baba Kwame, he just got in. He said that brother was so far ahead of his time. Yes, for his age, he was only 20 years old. And Africa the Great said the clip is on point. Love from the Black man's truth. Thank you so much, Africa the Great, for your donation. And Brother Emotep said, can't talk solution without a political education. Ashe, Ashe. Oh, thank you so much, family. I'll see you on December the 5th when we discuss the new book, The Color of Money, Black Banks and the Racial Wealth Gap. Have a blacktastic week. Have a blacktastic week. I see a beautiful mind. She said, love the wisdom. Crystal Denise, great book and discussions. I give thanks for the divine syncrasy that led me all to you. Ashe. Johnny Johnson says, praise the ancestors always. We stand on their shoulders. Ashe. We walk in their footsteps. Ashe. We are carried on their backs. Ashe. We have their DNA and soul genetics. Ashe. All right, family. Have a blacktastic week. Peace and black power.